Hi there ladies and gents, this is Michael Burhan for episode 4 of MovieFile. Today I'll be reviewing The Wrestler. The reason why I decided to review The Wrestler was due to the fact that it was suggested by a gentleman named George Orgazi on my Facebook page. So I looked into the movie. It was something that I've watched before and liked. It was also rather depressing. When everyone talks this movie, they expected it to be the next Rocky story, the Rocky for the wrestlers, for the wrestling fans, but it didn't turn out that way. Quite specifically, it's because of the fact that the movie and the tone of it shows how this guy's life slips from being like the greatest thing in the world. He was on centre stage and he was like a world champion who toured everywhere in the rock and wrestling, and then when his career just took a nosedive. Don't confuse this with the 1974 film with the same name, which had some involvement with Vern Gagne and AWA, because that was just a complete pile of shit. Now the movie was directed by Darren Aronofsky. It was a gentleman that basically had involvements in loads of sort of cult classics, and also was going to direct The Wolverine. But most people don't even know he was actually asked to direct one of the Batman franchises, but decided to turn it down, which was kind of a good move.
Never leave the cave without it.
A bat credit card? They gave him a bat credit card? They had the balls to give one of the greatest superheroes of all time a bat credit card? No! No! Does not compute! Does not compute! Does not compute! I can't say! I apologize for that outrage. It was childish and immature. I just get a little peeved when I see one of my childhood icons carrying a bat credit card, you bastards! I'll kill you! I'll kill all of you! All of you will die! You'll get the gas! Rape my childhood, will you? You'll all die! You will all die!
And for those of you commercially who don't know who this gentleman is, you can also check out another one of his movies that made rave reviews and won an Academy Award for, which was Black Swan. The movie was written by Robert D. Siegel and it starred Mickey Rourke. There was at one time that it was actually going to star Nicolas Cage, but I'm glad that didn't happen considering Nicolas Cage's body of work.
The beast! Not the beast! Ah! Open my eyes! My eyes! Ah!
Yes, Nick, the bees. The bees indeed. I'm not saying he's a bad actor, it's just he gets tied into a lot of shitty movies and that doesn't really help him.
You play a guy who can communicate with dolphins and uses this power to hunt them.
Yes!
It's a silent movie.
Yes!
There's a scene in it where you have real, actual sex with a puppy.
Yes, yes, yes!
And it's not going to be shot on film, it's going to be shot on fruit by the foot.
Yes, 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 yes!
Nicholas, I'm making this one up! I'm making it up! You can't say yes to it because it doesn't f***ing exist!
Well, let's get Bruckheimer on the horn then.
No, Nick, I quit! You're a tasteless asshole!
What?
A tasteless!
And the story of this film, the initial premise is Rourke plays an aging professional wrestler by the name of Randy the Ram Robinson. It's kind of sort of like a biopic because it looks at his life and everything that's been going on after his glory days. Now, if you're wondering what the glory days were in this, it's actually set in the rock and wrestling age, sort of the same age that Hogan inspired and Roddy Piper, and it had all those sort of glamorous glam rock people entering the stage, music, and it was all about being wearing colourful tights and being as glammy and as showy as possible. Everyone was compared to rock stars back in this day. There was a load of drugs use. It was rampant. As most of you, if you know your wrestling history, seen that Vincent Mann was actually taken to court over the whole excessive use of steroids in this federation at the time, and a lot of guys were going around cheating on their wives and just doing whatever the hell they felt like it because they felt that they were rock stars. They had this mentality. And I also want to put forward that this is in no way highlights wrestling today. Wrestling today, especially with the WWE, has become a lot more significant in saving lives rather than costing them. There's rehabilitation now, there's options like wellness testing, which basically looks at your heart rate, any conditions that you may have, and helps you to sort of leave a better lifestyle, basically. And that's the main thing. So I want to put that out there before I actually do this review, and talk about the story of this review, as the fact is, I don't want to sit there and try and point fingers at anybody in this industry at the moment. There's still some shady promoters rampant if you look at the independent industry, but it's not, you know, totally like it was before. So it's a good thing that they have companies like the WWE who are actually looking out for wrestlers' well-beings. Now let's go back to the story. As you know, that Randy the Ram was significant in the 1980s, and he had quite a career but didn't save his pennies. Randy wrestles on the weekends now for independent promotions, and also works a part-time job at a local grocery chain. But there's always, every time he's working the job at the supermarket chain, the manager there is always coming up with stupid names and swearing at him and calling him whatever. He's actually set up to be the sort of villain of this movie. And I mean, seriously, the guy gets caught in his office at one point watching porn. You would never get away with that. Now Randy also frequents a local strip club and befriends a stripper by the name of Cassidy, who's played by Marisa Tomei. Now I want to say something about Marisa Tomei. She's hot. And a lot of the words that are actually used in regards to her character and people calling her old and nobody wants a lap dance from her and stuff is just ridiculous. She literally is smoking, and I don't understand the reason why she is in this role. She's too good to be a down and out stripper. Now Randy is then put into a situation where he wins a local match for the World Heavyweight Championship, and he's approached by the local promoter who says, look, why don't we do the 20th anniversary for your match with the Ayatollah? We can build a box office event over this, you know, we'll co-promote it with Ring of Honor, of course, Ring of Honor, Nigel McGuinness. And Randy then decides that he's going to like intensify his training and make himself look a hell of a lot better. So he's taking steroids and loads of other supplements, and is literally leaving himself down and out. You know, there was one point he's even locked out of his own home because he's not paying the rent. Now Randy wrestles a hardcore match against Necro Butcher in CZW. This is where I have the biggest problem, and I'm going to say this. These ultra-violent matches are ridiculous, and this scene sort of kind of glorified it. And I understand the reason why. They wanted to show how desperate he was to wrestle, so he would do anything. And you saw like glass in his abdomen, you know, staples in his head, thumbtacks in his back. It was ridiculous. He was getting sewed up as you saw the cutscenes, you know, it would like it would transition to these scenes where he's just getting brutalized by Necro Butcher, and then you'd have that sort of the layout of him talking this match out with Butcher about Butcher saying, oh, I've got hobbly knees, I can't do this, I can run ropes a little bit, but you know, most of it's going to be a style, and it's abusive. It made me cringe. It's like, why would you do that to yourself? For the little money that they're paying you, why would you brutalize yourself? This was so effective in bringing out the vileness of CZW. I don't even know why they did this. It doesn't promote the organisation in a very positive light. And Necro Butcher as well. It really upsets me what this guy's doing just so he can be in the wrestling biz. It's like, if you even compare him to Mick Foley, don't. Because at least Foley had like some wrestling ability as well to work with his hardcore matches. He wasn't destroying himself on a regular basis for a show. He was doing things, and he could talk on the mic. He could make sure he gets his character over. Butcher didn't even do that. He's just, oh God. And then Randy has a heart attack that results in him having a coronary bypass. The doctor says to him, look, it's enough, that's it, you can't wrestle anymore. If you go back in that ring, you are going to have a heart attack. Leave it. Randy then retires and begins to work weekends full-time for the deli counter. As I said, he goes in to go to his boss. There's a funny little scene where his boss goes, well, can't you walk through the door? Why don't we try that again? Now, he's literally a small man. And I don't understand why Randy's taking shit from this guy. And yes, we all understand it's because of the fact that this, you know, he's the villain of the people. And you know, he has a conversation with Cassidy, explains to her what he wants to do. He wants to get married, he wants to settle down, and you know, he wants to find something missing from his life, and talks about his estranged daughter. Cassidy says to him, why don't you go and visit her? Why don't you try and mend fences? So he does so by goes to visit Stephanie, who's played by Evan Rachel Wood. But she plays a very minor but a very crucial part to this story. And the great thing about it is, from the get-go, she's on fire. She's literally the actress that steals the show, kind of, in this piece. But everyone does their part and sort of waves the clearest picture that they can for this. She's angry because he's abandoned her when she was a child. He left her, he didn't talk to her, he didn't send her birthday gifts, he didn't do anything. He cut her out of his life. And also the fact that he realises that she's a lesbian, which has nothing wrong with that. It's actually quite funny to see him saying it in passing, like, oh, you know, she's kind of a lesbian. But what do lesbians wear? It's like she has some kind of disease. It's actually quite fun. He decides, after all the violent venom that his daughter like produces towards him, that he's going to go and buy her a gift. He's going to try and do something to allow him to gain a little step closer to trying to rebuild his relationship, which is a good move. He tries to get Cassidy in turn as well to try and like form a kind of relationship for them, you know, and build something towards his future. But she keeps rebuffing him and saying, no, you know, I can't do it, and there's the reason why, because I have a son. So what he does, he gives her like a Randy the Ram action figure and stuff, and basically they form some kind of a bond after they have a drink together. So he has this present for his daughter. Life seems to be going pretty well for Randy at this. So after this, he decides, right, I'm going to go and give her my gift to my daughter and try and patch things up and get this relationship working again. So he gives her a gift and gives her this ugly top thing and says it's got an S on it, which means Stephanie, and then says, no, wait, that's not the gift, I've got something else for you. Goes in his van, picks it out, and then gives her this beautiful coat. He then walks with his daughter to the Broadwalk, and they decide to basically talk things out, and he has a beautiful monologue in this about how he's such a bad father and he was such a bad person in a very bad place, and that he always screws things up. It kind of reminds you, it's reminiscent of like Jake the Snake Roberts, if you've seen him in Beyond the Mat. And if you before you watch this movie, I'd advise you to go and see that movie, because a lot of the scenes from this are lifted from that exact same documentary. And yeah, he was a screw up. Jake the Snake was a screw up with his own kids. You know, he didn't know what he could do. He was immersed in this drug lifestyle that he built around himself. It was kind of his wall. And Randy did the same thing. And he's talking to his daughter, trying to rebuild that relationship. And then, you know, she recants on her anger and agrees to go to dinner with her dad and talk things out. Then he goes to the strip club, tries to talk to Cassidy about things, because his life's going okay, but it's not going as great as he wanted it to go because of the fact that he's forced to retire. That's always laid in the back of his mind, and Rourke does a great way to convey this. He conveys it, even though, as one person said, his face looks melted, he conveys his emotions rather effectively. So he goes to the strip club, he goes to talk to Cassidy about this and thank her about everything that she's done, and try and proposes her to again and to develop some sort of relationship between the two. She rejects him because of her job and says straight that, you know, she just wants to do what she's doing, and he's a customer, he's not a friend, he's nothing to her. He gets upset, and this leads to a huge exchange. They blow up at each other, and the bouncer says, look, Randy, come on, you know, you're a nice guy, time to go. He then goes to watch a wrestling match where he just basically likes to see the other guys. They have their matches, and then he starts talking to two guys, one who is WWE's own Ron the Truth Killings, R-Truth, and they just have a discussion. He says, like, yeah, do you want to go for a drink? He's like, oh yeah, I'll go for a drink. Are you buying? And then it leads to this whole night of debauchery. He then ends up snorting coke with this girl and banging her in the middle of a very awkward scene where a woman just comes into the bathroom and she's like, geez, get a room. Just think of it. Imagine banging someone in a bathroom. Has that ever happened to you? I thought they had stalls, or you're not banging someone over the sink. He then wakes up in this girl's room, which looks like something weird, with a pet ferret, and then decides to clear off. So he goes home, goes straight to bed, and ends up sleeping through the night. So he ends up missing his date with his daughter. He tries to go and patch things up with her and talk to her about the situation, and her roommate / lover is standing there at the door when he tries to talk to her. She mistakenly leaves the door open to go and try and see if she wants to actually speak to her dad or not, and he goes through the door and tries to explain himself. She tells him to leave, her roommate / lover leaves, and then he's trying to talk her out of the whole situation. She breaks down in this scene as well, in a whole pivotal moment, a moment where you can tell everything has finally come crushing down to her, that he's not the only one with a screwed up life, and he tries to comfort her, and she tells him straight, I don't want nothing to do with you, I don't want anything to do with you anymore, you're You keep screwing up. You keep messing with my life. You keep trying to get me to trust you. And when I do, you just fail all my expectations. This is a big thing. It's a pivotal moment in the movie. It's a scene that shows that he has lost everything in his life. You know, it's not just about the career, it's not just about the fans. He's lost the people that matter. He can't even hold on to them. So then he starts working at the deli counter and, you know, just basically doing his thing. Now, he just went ballistic in this scene, and a lot of it was due to the fact that people would talk. This old woman was irritating the crap out of him. He had his manager on his back all the time. Then he had this guy standing there going, "Hey, I remember you from somewhere," and he's literally going, "No, I remember you, and he's like trying to wave it off and say, "Look, you don't know me, bud, don't worry about it." And he keeps asking questions after questions, and then goes, "I know you, you're the Ram!" Bang! He explodes. Rourke puts his hand into the meat grinder and freaking splits it open, goes ballistic, screams and shouts. His manager comes in and he calls him a little fucking, "How would you talk to me like this? And I would just punch you in your motherfucking face." I just looked at it and thought, shit has hit the fan. It's not just hit the fan, it's gone everywhere. It's diarrhea, it's like water puddles. Oh god, shit everywhere.
There's shit everywhere! Damn it! There's shit on the windows! Oh my god! My house is full of shit! He shit everywhere! Look what he did! He shit all over the wall! Calm down! Just calm down!
Randy then says, "Look, I've got nothing left." He's thinking to himself, "I'm going to just go and make the call and go to this convention." That's what he does. He goes to the convention and basically goes for wrestling this match. He covers up his scar and tries, you know, bleaches his hair down and in hopes that he can get that one last buzz. He knows that he may not make his way out of this alive, but he's gonna do it anyway. Suddenly there's another pivotal scene in this with Cassidy. She stands there, she's pretending to enjoy her job and be aroused by stripping on a pole, but then she realised that everything's fruitless and that the one thing that mattered to her is she's just thrown out the window. So then Randy just says to her, "Look," you know, she goes to see Randy and he goes to her, "Look, it's too little too late. I'm not doing this anymore," and gets in his van and goes off to go and wrestle. You know, she stands there and she's freaking out over this, going like totally ballistic. So she decides, "Listen, I'm gonna go down there and try and stop him." This again is kind of, it's a funny little scene because it reminds us of that whole pivotal scene between Rocky and Adrian when she goes to watch him in the match. But it's kind of it turns it on his head. Randy talks to the Ayatollah, who's having a conversation with Nigel McGuinness, and decides, you know, to call his match. Randy says, "Look, do you want to discuss things?" And he's like, we don't discuss things back in the old days. I'll call what I want in the ring and you just do it. Which I think is actually quite hilarious in terms of what's been going on, in terms of their relationship at least. It establishes something, a connection these guys had to the old school wrestling mentality, and does it very quickly. Now, Randy's getting ready for his match and Cassidy comes to see him and basically tries to talk him out of this. Tries to get him to stop, you know, doing this and you know, just due to the fact that this guy could kill himself. He may end up in a situation where he'll be dead. Nobody knows. But she's trying to stop this from happening. Now Randy again puts on a stellar performance with the Ayatollah. They go back and forth in the ring, start hitting each other, going for clotheslines and hitting loads of over-the-top moves until Ram gets to the point where he feels like he's gonna collapse. He's holding his chest, his heart is packing in, and the Ayatollah basically says, "Look, don't worry, I'll finish the match with you. Just finish the match, pin me, get out of here. Pin me, get out of here, we can get you looked at." This is the darkest part. He decides, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do what I'm here to do," and that's, you know, for the fans, to keep them happy. And you're sitting there screaming to yourself, "No, don't do it. Don't do it. This could be the end." And he's, you know, he wants to go up, he wants to do this, he wants to end the match. Now, meanwhile, Cassidy's up there. She's up in the audience watching and then decides to leave. You don't know if she actually leaves or she just goes down to where the fans are. But again, it turns the whole concept of Adrian and Rocky on its head because of the fact that she doesn't want to see him kill himself, you know, but wants to support him and stop this from happening before he does it. Randy decides against all good consciousness, against any reasonable doubt, to go up to the top rope and hit the ram jam. He does that, and the scene just turns to black, and it leaves the whole thing open-ended. It makes you think, what happened? And, you know, for me, I was just sitting there gritting my teeth, biting my nails, trying to figure out if this guy is okay. I was never more concerned for a character in my life. Now, you're probably asking me what happened to the other scenes. Now, the reason why I didn't use a lot of these scenes in here and just went for a brief synopsis of the film was because of the fact that they were just used to link certain parts of the story together, but weren't crucial. For instance, if you're looking at the signing that he did with all the old stars and he sees Kath of the bags and guys falling asleep at their desks, it kind of sets a little bit of a tone that he's washed up, but that was already established at the beginning of the movie. Or you're probably talking about the fact that he beats up a load of guys at a bachelor party who end up like making fun of Cassidy and corner a 70-year-old woman. That does nothing to establish her character, because in the end she's not washed up. She looks gorgeous. She doesn't look like she's aged like over 30. So there was no point in that. And that's the big thing here. The whole premise of the movie, the whole story, was encapsulated in a few scenes between Randy, Cassidy, and also his daughter. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that you wanted to see this guy's life just go down the top. Now let's talk about theme for a second. The theme of this movie is quite simple. He's a washed up wrestler who's trying to get his life back on track, but it's pretty much the same theme as Beyond the Map, but taken more in a movie context than in a biopic context. It does what it says on the tin. It brings his life out in the open and gives everybody a perspective on what's happening with this guy. So a lesson can be learned, and also to show you the fact that not everything is, you know, roses and flowers. The fact is, Randy's life took a huge turn for the worst, and a lot of it was due to his own decisions. Because he decided to neglect his daughter, he made a choice to just concentrate on wrestling. He made a very bad investment because he didn't use the money that he had wisely, instead spending it on a load of crap, including drugs and steroids and fast cars and women. Does that remind us of someone? So that left him in a very precarious situation. So he made that choice. And then once he was told to stop doing it again, he made the choice to go back to wrestle because he wanted that one last big hurrah. And it's a quite sad tale. It's a very sad movie, looking at the fact that this guy just goes from worse to worse as the movie progresses. Mickey Rourke as Randy the Ram Robinson portrays his character rather well. As I said, he's a down and out wrestler, down in his luck, and it's something that Mickey Rourke could actually emphasize with in terms of a character, because he was a guy who was big, and he had a very prominent career in the 80s and 90s, but it all went down the toilet. You know, it all started with the movie 9.5 Weeks that he did with Kim Basinger, but then it just slid down as he attempted to keep himself relevant. So there was a lot that he could actually do in regards to this character, and I have to admit as well that the training, the progression, the way he looked so lean for the role really did him favours. You know, at the fact I believe he didn't, but he should have won Best Oscar for this pick. And the fact that he should have won Best Actor shows the fact that his character was so well done. A lot of it also had to do with the writing and the direction of where he took this character. Now let's talk about Marisa Tomei. Even though she didn't appear to be this sort of down and out stripper, she kind of had the character down. She knew what the character entailed. She understood who Cassidy / Pam was, but I just felt that she was just too young for the role. And a lot of that had to do to the fact she just has a baby face. And Evan Rachel Wood as Stephanie, Randy's daughter, she was the link. She was the one character in this movie that you could really empathise with. She was broken. She was pretty much similar to her dad. She was broken, but she was broken because of him. She blamed him for her life not turning out the way that it was. Every positive she had, she made for herself. And the fact that Randy left her and practically destroyed any link she had of having a relationship with her father kind of sucked. And that's pretty much where the links in the story were. Everyone did their part. The supporting actors, everyone knew who their characters was and understood the context of this movie and where it was leading, and everything kind of contributed to how good this movie was. And as I said, I can't speak so highly enough about this film because of the fact that you had an all-star cast in this that allowed it to encompass something that you never usually see in a movie like this. You know, back in the day when you're attempting to do a movie about wrestling, you got some things like this.
Hey, nice spirit, kid.
Who you calling kid?
Oh, WTW, ready to rumble. How we never want to see you again. And that was the problem. It was movies like WCW Ready to Rumble that really destroyed the whole mystique about wrestling, and how they tried to do things more so in kayfabe, whereas with stuff like The Wrestler, it brought a sense of reality to it. Was it a big thing at the time? Yeah, it was, because it allowed people to view a certain style of wrestling, something that's never been done quite recently, but it was also at a time where wrestling deaths became quite the norm, and that's where this movie has its strengths. A lot of it was due to the surroundings at the time and what was going on with people like Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, and it allowed people to get drawn a lot more to a movie that really wouldn't have any mind paid attention to it. And it doesn't take away the strengths the movie has on its own. So with that, let me give you my grade. As always, we have 1 being the worst piece of shit that you ever had, and 5 being the fact that the movie was the greatest of all time. And with that being said, I give this movie a 5, and that's because of the fact that this movie really drew me in, and every time I watch it, it's just like a new experience. Watching Rourke portray this character, someone that I could really get into and empathize with, really helped. And even with weak parts like Marisa Tomei's Cassidy, that still didn't hold the movie back. It did everything they needed to do to tell the story. And that's what brings this movie about. It's a story. The story was the essential part of this movie that allowed us to get into the lives of these characters, delve in and sort of get into the meat of this story, and bringing out that something to people who don't even know wrestling could probably understand. So tomorrow's review, as part of the 100 movies in 100 days, I'm doing a request by a gentleman named Aaron Hughes, who's a long-time fan of Nerdgenious, and also someone who's become pretty much a friend of mine. So Aaron's choice is Logan's Run. So catch that tomorrow, and I'll see you guys then for another movie file. So I'll see you then.